Who is to blame for the problems at Manchester United, for the lack of signings over the summer? Is it Jose Mourinho? Is it Ed Woodward? Is it the Glazers? Today we're going to get into that. Let's go.
Oh, what a finish! Beautiful goal.
I've heard a lot of people defending Jose Mourinho, and I've gone hard after Jose. I've accused him of going after his own players, of losing the dressing room, and of having, wrong priorities in terms of the targets that he wanted to bring in over the summer. The past couple of days, I've seen a lot of people change their stance on this. There's a couple of links in the description. I want you to check out an article in The Guardian where it came out, a couple of weeks ago, where Ed Woodward briefed The Guardian and basically said that, there was an impasse, there was a disagreement between the board and Jose Mourinho in terms of the players that they wanted to bring in. And Mourinho was thinking more short term, and they were thinking more long term, particularly when it comes to Harry Maguire and Old Trafford. Apparently the club were willing to splash the cash on Varane, which would make sense. Varane probably the best centre back in the world right now, commercial value. And also, is not going to be his value. Certainly, if you pay 100 million for Varane, it's an inflated market because the market's inflated, but it doesn't compare to having to pay 80 million for Harry Maguire. Anyway, people are taking that as meaning that Jose Mourinho has never been in charge or never had a say in transfers at Manchester United. I disagree with that. Personally, I don't think that has been the case. I specifically remember Mourinho when he arrived in his first press conference talking about how the club decided to create a nucleus. He said specifically we decided to create a nucleus of 4 players. He was referring to Eric Bailly, Paul Pogba, Henrik Mkhitaryan, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And he got those players. Since then, I don't think you can say that the board haven't backed him. People are saying that Mourinho doesn't have the final say on transfers, that there's people above him who make the decisions. Well, I think that's always been the case post-Ferguson era. It hasn't been the case of, the manager just having carte blanche. But I think in general, if you look back, I think the board have always kind of backed the man in charge. I don't think they've been going over his head. Certainly you can't tell me United would have bought Marouane Fellaini if anyone but David Moyes had succeeded Fergie. That was never going to happen. Juan Mata was one where, I think it was just a case of a top player being available. And of course United are going to explore that, like Alexis Sanchez. But I think Louis van Gaal, Falcao, Di Maria, Memphis Depay coming in, Morgan Schneiderlin coming in, Daley Blind coming in. You can't tell me those weren't Louis van Gaal signings. I think the club have backed the managers. Certainly they've backed their managers. Anthony Martial, obviously there's scouting systems and there's people who have come and gone in terms of, the scouting system behind the scenes. But generally, I think, especially in the beginning, the board and Ed Woodward gave Mourinho what he wanted. I think the reason why they stopped backing him this summer, to a degree, I kind of agree with Gary Neville's stance on you can't 3 quarters build a house. The club have backed Mourinho up to this point. They've brought in all the players he's requested for the most part, with the exception of Perisic last summer, where he really wanted someone on that right wing. And the club failed to bring in Perisic. Other than that, the club really have gone and got the players Mourinho wanted and spent a lot of money on the likes of Lindelof. People are now questioning, did Mourinho want Lindelof? Where did Lindelof come from? He came from Benfica, which just so happened to be the best team in the Portuguese Superliga, which just so happens to be a league that Mourinho, being Portuguese, follows very closely. I don't think you can come out now all of a sudden and say Mourinho didn't want Mkhitaryan, didn't want Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I call bullshit. Mourinho wanted those players. Mourinho wanted Pogba. Mourinho, in my opinion, probably couldn't wait to prove to the world that he knew better than Sir Alex, and that Sir Alex shouldn't have sold Paul Pogba. Sir Alex, with all this drama coming out with Raiola, I've got another video on the beef between Mino Raiola and Paul Scholes that I put up the other day. Go ahead and check that one out too, because that's absolutely shameful, the conduct of Mino Raiola. And I saw a clip emerge of Sir Alex. I remember reading in his autobiography specifically that one of the main reasons, probably the main reason Paul Pogba left Manchester United initially was Mino Raiola. And he said that their first meeting was a complete fiasco with Raiola. and he made all sorts of unbelievable, crazy demands. And I think, Mourinho and Ed Woodward kind of made a deal with the dirty devil in, allowing Pogba to come back and in brokering that whole deal with Raiola. You got 3 Mino Raiola players arrived in one window, Mkhitaryan and Zlatan. And, that's worked out really well for the club, hasn't it? And I just think that, the board did back Mourinho. I can understand both sides of the argument, where definitely it is true that having finished 19 points behind City last season, the board should have invested heavily. United, when City won the title in Sir Alex's penultimate season on the last day, we went out and got Van Persie that summer. And, I think the fact that we finished second, yes, it was our best finish post-Fergie era, but we're still 19 points behind Man City. From a footballing point of view, that should be enough to make the club go and splurge on top players. Go out and get the likes of Diabala. Go out and make a really audacious offer that can't be refused for Gareth Bale. Really go and address that right wing position. Even go in and maybe make a bid for Griezmann. Get in a backup, reliable, world-class backup for Lukaku. Go and inquire about Benzema, even though maybe Benzema is not a good example. But Rebic, Perisic, go out there and really splurge and really make sure that we do everything we can to close that gap. Go out and get 2 new fullbacks. Go out and do whatever you can to close that gap. I think the fact that the club weren't as eager to invest, I think it does show a lack of ambition. And, there's been a lot of talk about, the Glazers and them just being happy to milk this club for everything that it is. We don't have owners like Sheikh Mansour and like the PSG owners who want everything to be perfect. When you've got all the money in the world, like they do, you're not trying to make money out of a football club. You're trying to build something special, and you want the best of everything. That's why Man City went out and got Chiki Begarestain, Florian Soriano, laying the foundation for Pep. Then they went and got the best manager in the world. They're trying to build the best team in the world for sustained success. The Glazers are trying to keep Manchester United at a level where we're competitive, and they can milk the Manchester United brand for all that it's worth. That certainly is the case. I do not disagree with that. That is true. By the same token, they have shown a willingness to go out and spend a lot of money for top-class players. You can't tell me that Jose Mourinho didn't want Alexis Sanchez. You can't tell me that he wasn't licking his lips at the prospect of beating Pep Guardiola to a marquee signing. A player who seemed was nailed on, odds on, to go to Manchester City. You can't tell me that Jose didn't get any satisfaction out of that. Bullshit. Of course he did. I think the problem comes in the summer where you have Jose Mourinho. I remember in January, Jose coming out and saying, we're not going to sign any attacking players. I thought that was a big mistake. And I think, he gives his list of 4 players to the board. I think Diogo Dalot was one of them. I think Fred was one of them. I think probably the other one was Toby Alderweireld, and the other one was Milinkovic-Savic. Now, Milinkovic-Savic never happened because Napoli were asking way too much money, and we already have similar kind of players in the squad. Having signed Fred is also a defensive midfield player. Milinkovic-Savic kind of box to box, had a great World Cup. Is he that much of an upgrade on Matic, or that much of an upgrade if you have Fred and Pogba in there already? Not necessarily. And I think the board would probably thinking, well, hey, this summer, let's go out and get a real marquee player. Let's go out and get someone like Gareth Bale, and maybe the people who make the decisions when it comes to transfers were thinking what I'm thinking about this Manchester United squad, that it's terribly unbalanced. Yes, Jones, Smalling, Valencia, Young aren't good enough, but we have Bailly, we have Lindelof, who you signed. If you think they're not good enough, well, we spend a lot of money on these players. You got to make it better, And yes, we can compare it to what Man City have done. They've spent 200 million on fullbacks and a goalkeeper and 2 goalkeepers. That's true. Bravo was a mistake. What do? They bring in Edison. But unfortunately, in as much as we might be the richest club in the world in terms of generating revenue, we don't have a bottomless pit of funds like they do over at City. We can't just go and spend 40 million on Bailly and then not play him and sell him on a couple of seasons later, a couple of months later. We've done that too often in the past, in these last couple of years, with the likes of Di Maria, Falcao, Depay, splurging, no return on investment. So I think the board have backed Jose, and I think that there was an impasse. He wanted defensive players. He wanted to, reinforce defensively, bring in better centre backs. Thinking that was how he was going to improve the team. For me, last season we had one of the best defense. We had the most clean sheets in the league. We didn't not advance in the Champions League because we didn't have good defenders. Yes, we're not going to win the Champions League with Jones and Smalling. We're not going to win the Premier League with Valencia, Young, Jones, Smalling as our back four. But we have Bailly, we have Lindelof, we have Rojo, we have other options. The players who he has brought in, I spoke about in the previous videos, his recruitment has been poor. Zlatan's moved on, Mkhitaryan's moved on, and we didn't get the best out of Mkhitaryan. Pogba, we haven't got the best out of Paul Pogba. Eric Bailly, up and down. At times looks like he could be a fantastic world-class defender. Other games, look what he did at Brighton and Hove Albion. Lindelof, same thing. Lukaku, yes, he's been good. Matic and Lukaku have been consistently at a decent level of performance. Despite Lukaku's goal drought last season, he still brings a lot to the team. And then Alexis Sanchez has been a monumental failure. So how can you really go and trust Mourinho's judgment in the market when he's giving you a list of players who, it doesn't make sense. We really need to bring in attacking reinforcements and higher quality options in our attacking third of the pitch, where, especially on the right-hand side, we don't have quality. We don't have the quality to compete with the top teams in Europe and certainly not in the Premier League. And when we had such a solid defense in the Premier League last season, yes, a lot of that was down to David De Gea, no doubt about that, but I still think that it's not justifiable to say that we don't need any attacking players, and I think that's where the board failed to back Jose. So yeah, it is somewhat Ed Woodward's fault. I don't think he is great at the negotiating and the transfer side of the job. He's no David Gill. You know, he was brought in to make the club as much money. He is effectively another Glazer brother, you know, because of how he helped broker the deal for the Glazers to take over. That's how he ended up as Manchester United chairman. Ed Woodward, yeah, he's to blame, partially. Jose Mourinho is to blame for his negative football, his inability to get the best out of players, his patchy recruitment. And again, I am laying the blame for the bad recruitment in the Mourinho era at the door of Ed Woodward and those people who are making those decisions when it comes to transfers, and at Jose Mourinho, because I don't buy into this whole idea that Jose didn't have a say in any of the players who come in. Maybe, yeah, in terms of the players who've left, you know, maybe the board vetoed his desire to sell Anthony Martial. Again, I think that's fully understandable. If you look at the players who Jose has let go before in his career, De Bruyne, Salah, who have gone on to become absolute world beaters and world-class players. I think that Jose Mourinho has to take the lion's share and the bulk of the blame for what's going on right now. He set a negative tone with his whole narrative in pre-season, complaining about not having players back, firing Martial for going back and having a kid, going after Pogba, and everything else that he did in pre-season that was so typical of Mourinho. And now he's just come out and compounded that. His attitude, you know, all the things he's come out and said towards the board, I think, you know, he's tried to backtrack with his comments towards Pogba, and he's trying to backtrack with his comments about Ed Woodward, you know, saying everything's fine, not commenting on Pogba, now all of a sudden not wanting to analyze his players' performances with the media. I think his press conference was a blinder, by the way, before the Tottenham game. You got a stick for that. I thought that was a good press conference because the questions were absolutely bullshit from the journalists. You know, one journalist asked the question, you know, games against Tottenham are always tight affairs. Is it a case of the right game at the right time? That question doesn't even make sense. Games against Tottenham are tight affairs. Is this the right game at the right time? What? Like if we're playing like some, you know, newly promoted side or some whipping boys of the league, then you could say, is this the right game at the right time? You can't open with, you know, these games are generally tight affairs. Is this the right game at the right time? I thought Jose's answer was brilliant. I thought his performance in that press conference was brilliant. But I thought his performance in the post-game against Spurs was embarrassing. It's embarrassing for any manager, especially embarrassing for Manchester United manager. Should not be behaving that way. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm done ranting now. Bottom line is, I think Ed Woodward's to blame, the Glazers to blame, the players are to blame, but mostly Jose Mourinho is to blame. And I think it's time that he leaves. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. That's BGTV for today, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, what a finish!